Okay, so I'm going to get started, Jay, and I'm really
Okay.
excited to talk with you. I know some people build things to be impressive, and some people build things because they couldn't not. And I think that today's conversation is with somebody in that second category. I think that Virtue Strong, from my understanding or for where I sit, it's not about technology, it's about reflection and it's about a tool to help us be a better version of ourselves. And it's about tapping into strengths. And I think it's about evolving. And so I think that your interest in, we're about to find out, um, is more in alignment in building something that reflects what you might believe humans are meant to do, which is showing up for one another with patience and honesty and care. So it's not going to be a conversation about an app per se. I think it's a conversation that is going to demonstrate your humanity. So that's my desire. And so anyway, I'm grateful to be able to have the conversation with you. And I'm curious, before we even talk about Virtue Strong, I'd like to know, without coming across too Barbara Walters on you, is what kind of kid were you? What did younger you care about deeply?
Oh gosh. That's funny. I wasn't expecting that. So, what kind of kid was I? I was very exploratory, actually. I was very curious. So it was kind of weird when I was growing up because we moved around a lot. The first 12 years of my life, I lived in three different states and like 12 different houses. And it's not like, my parents were running from anything. It was just, that's just kind of the way it worked out. And so it was normal for me to start a school year where I didn't know anybody and I would go in the middle of a school season and not know anything. I remember being in fourth grade, walking into a classroom, and the assignment was to fill out an envelope like you're mailing a letter. So you put your address on it, and I didn't know my address because we had just moved there. And and I remember everybody laughing at me, and so that was part of it. Getting reacclimated to places, I was doing that a lot. We had one situation where we moved right down the street, so that was kind of odd. But it's funny. It taught me some things. You're kind of left out there. You don't really have any people anchors, and you just kind of have to develop friendships and start new all the time. And I got accustomed to that, and I'm really became good at it. And I got into trouble, like not really bad trouble, but like I would experiment with like fire and so always very safe, but. Uh, I would kind of get into trouble like that. And we would also like take off. This never happens now, but we would take off, leave the house. We'd leave in the morning. And I lived in northern Kentucky when I was a kid for a couple of years. And we would leave the house and just leave in the morning and explore and then come back like when the sun was going down. And we would walk for miles and miles. We'd go through cornfields and cross creeks and all kinds of stuff. So those are the times I remember. And then I also was very, very much into sports. So I played soccer, I played basketball, and I was always doing that kind of stuff. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of the kind of kid that I was. And
Yeah, it sounds
always very funny and comedic and a lot of humor. And I basically was the clown. And so that's how I grew up.
sounds like you were very curious, you were very active, and you liked to get people to react in a way that sounded like it was very disarming and just people love to laugh. And so being able to be a source of that for people, that sounds
I think it's true for most kids or a lot of kids, and I didn't really think about this at the time, but harmony was really important. I would
Mm.
feel very uneasy around conflict. And so I did things to always have harmony around, whether it was, making light of the situation, making jokes, or trying to take the attention off of the tension. I did that a lot.
That harmony piece might lead into my next question, which is, what's something people would never guess about you just by looking at your body of work and the things that you have poured yourself into?
A good question. I wasn't expecting that, but something that somebody wouldn't expect, I guess, kind of a romantic, actually. I don't, the only person that really knows that now, I mean, you're getting it out of me here publicly, but, my wife knows that. But I kind of, I listen to sad songs and like I do a lot of that. I never really wondered why, but I don't really advertise it, but it is, I do that.
Is that, and this is definitely down the line on this, but I'm curious that you brought that up. Um, did you want to mention, and I know there's no segue into it just yet, but did you want to mention about the stories that you have written and any part of that? Because what you just said kind of related so much to maybe your interest in that.
Yeah, the stories are interesting. So I never planned on writing. In school, I didn't write as a kid. I didn't do much of that. But I always have followed my intuition. You know how you hear people say, follow your intuition if you're kind of getting just a gut feeling that you should do something to follow it. I've actually always done that. I've always done that. And sometimes when I feel like I shouldn't, or I'm here doing one job and then I just kind of ignore it and I work on something else just because I feel like that's what I should do. And it's weird because in some cases it's kind of led me in a lot of different directions. And from the outside, it may appear scattered. So I do different things at different times that don't really seem to make much sense. But then looking back, it all kind of makes sense. It's really kind of weird when you do that and you trust it. People sometimes would say that I'm a risk taker. And I'm like, I never really looked at it that way because I never really consider it to be a risk. It's, when you follow your gut, there's a reason for it. And once you rely on it and trust it, it's really about trust. So you asked about the stories, and I wanted to say that first because it kind of cues up where the stories came from. In about, I guess, maybe 2015, right around that time, I had this just, I mean, I had to get it out of me. It was this compulsion. I could feel it. It was like just bubbling up. And I just started writing these stories. And it was like, I wasn't even writing them. It was like they were writing themselves. And they covered, I don't know, 5 or 6 different topics. And it was almost like the stories were showing me something. So I was writing them and they were kind of reflecting back these truths, these really deep truths. And they're all different stories. And some of them, there's kids playing and it's about their imagination. And one of them is about a woman with her, who just had a baby, and she's reflecting on, it's called Flawless. And she's looking at this baby, and this baby's flawless. And she's thinking, I was this baby at one time. I was flawless. And then, what happened? What happened to that? And that happens to all of us. And the story is just so telling. The story had a grip on me. And I'm not the best writer in the world. I read other people's stuff and I'm like, oh gosh, their stuff is so much better writing. But it was the messages that I had to get out. And then it stopped. I just stopped writing for a couple of years. And then I picked it back up again. So it kind of falls in line with the writing. It's very much, I don't know, follow instructions. Like I just do whatever it is that my heart is telling me to go towards. I kind of just go after that. And I don't really pay much attention to the reasons why. So I question why, but the stories were a good example of that.
That's awesome. So I'm curious if you remember when VirtueStrong for you stopped being an idea and started feeling like something you wanted to put out into the world.
Well, VirtueStrong started with us. You remember, you and I had that conversation last year, and we were talking about these things that we could do. We felt like we could combine our superpowers and do something extraordinary. The roots of VirtueStrong, I guess in my mind, go way further back than that. It was a kind of an assemblage of different pieces that come together. And the one thing that, so let me backtrack just a tad here. So a little bit more about my background. So I've always been a systems person and developed systems. So I started as a programmer, and out of college was self-employed. And again, kind of following that track, I'd work on one project, finish it, work on another project, finish it. I was doing designing enterprise systems at a very young age. I put a lot of work into it, and I was pretty driven. I wanted success. I wanted to build businesses. That's what I wanted to do. And I also wanted the systems back then for me created a structure, and I love that. So you take a business and you're able to lend it a structure, and it's really all about communication. And that's what systems really are or were back in those days, is that you're facilitating communication with a team, with a business, whether it's a government organization or a nonprofit or a business. And I love that because I'm a creator. I love to build things. And then I hit a wall. And what happened was it was kind of like I felt like I had done everything right. Like I had built I never took the shortcuts. I learned everything. I did everything myself. I built this up from scratch. It took years to do, and it had some success. And it was like I did everything the right way. And then I had started getting these, I guess you call them intrusive thoughts, panic attacks. Like it was horrible. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening to me? And from my systems work, I'm like, if you really want to know how to fix something, then you have to know how it works. That's just the mentality that I learned from my skills as a software engineer. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out, what is it about the human mind? How does it work? Well, I didn't really know what I was up against because it turns out that it's way more sophisticated than you could ever possibly imagine. But in the course of that investigation, which is still ongoing, by the way, this started 15 years ago, maybe 12, 15 years ago, I learned some things, and I actually figured out a way to find inner peace. I figured out a way to go from having panic attacks, why they happen or why they happen to me, and then also all of the frustrations and all the things that really get you angry, frustrated, all of the source of all that. I found all that, created my own remedies for it because I'm kind of a do-it-yourselfer, and followed that, trusted it, just like I had always trusted the guidance, the inner guidance that had got me that far. And that's actually what led to VirtueStrong, because I discovered that what you focus on grows. That's not something that you can assign a formula to. You can't even really understand it from a scientific perspective, but we all know it's true. What you focus on grows. If you focus on something positive, positivity will grow. If you focus on something negative, negativity will grow. And we all have this. We have something that's very obvious in our lives that we want to change or we want to fix. And we view it as a problem. And then we focus on the problem. Well, what happens? The problem grows. And so VirtueStrong is like, okay, let's figure out, what are we supposed to focus on? If we don't focus on our problems, then in order to get out of it, we have to acknowledge it. That's true. We don't want to put our head in the sand, but we have to find something to focus on. And so it was kind of poetic to focus on virtues. That's what we focus on. So you take you're aware of what you want to resolve. You're aware of how you want to grow, but you don't focus on it. You focus on the virtues. So you focus on, so in VirtueStrong, we have 20 virtues. So they're like courage, patience, joy, boundaries, communication. There's 20 of them, and they're kind of along those lines. Forgiveness is a big one. If you focus on those and you grow those, what happens is whatever you kind of deemed as a problem or a frustration or even anxiety, those types of things, it goes away on its own. And that's kind of where VirtueStrong came from. And that's the basic premise behind it, actually.
When you talk about virtues, and you named quite a few of them, how would you define what a virtue is? And I guess I ask that for people to recognize almost the why, but maybe also the how in terms of your evolving, even as you kind of grew and hit that wall and then kind of progressed from there. Like, why are these important?
Yeah, so one thing that I noticed too is that we spend so much time taking stock in what we can see and things that are visible, material things. And that's what all the sciences are based on. And that's all important, and it's all real stuff. You can't deny what you can see. But what's interesting to me is all the things that are unseen that are even more real than what are seen. And we deal with them every day, but we never really, I don't know, we're aware of them, but sometimes we discount them. But we base our whole lives on things that are invisible, like trust. What is trust? You can't really point to it. You only can know it by practicing it. So it's invisible. So, you talk about values. People talk about values a lot. And values are different than virtues. Virtues are, to me, they're more of like an ideal of who you want to become. Do you want to be more forgiving? Do you want to have more acceptance? Do you want to be a kinder person? Do you want to? So these are virtues that you can pursue as sort of like an idea that you have in mind. They're just words, but they're more than words because they really embody our actions. And that's really where the work is. So VirtueStrong doesn't solve anything. It doesn't fix anything for you. It's just a reflector. As you go, you can reflect back what you're doing. And you talk to these guides, and they're amazing. They're empathetic. They reflect back what it is that you're doing, and they just point things out. That's all they do. They don't diagnose anything. They don't prescribe anything. They don't give any advice. They don't do any of that. They basically just kind of keep you on this track of virtues, and they're just gentle reminders of the virtues themselves. And I know from the work that I've done that following that leads you to peace of mind. And that's really, to me, if you've reached this point, like I was at a point where that's all I wanted was peace of mind. You can have the rest of it. You can have all of it. I don't want any of it. It was my highest priority. And the way to get there is to do this very thing. This is one of the things. I mean, there's many things you can do, but this is one of the things that can help you get there.
I'm curious, and peace of mind is definitely something you're sharing that was of the utmost importance to you. As you sit today, what is there a particular virtue that you feel that you're kind of focused on now as you've gotten that peace? Like, I'm curious about what virtue is important to you right now to be working on and working toward.
Yeah. So the other thing that happened over the course of this time was you start to look at things in terms of lifetime. This isn't just something I'm struggling with this week or this month or this year, but this entire life has a theme to it. And mine definitely is acceptance, self-acceptance. So I've had this thing, and this is maybe the source of where some of this anxiety was coming from years ago, of just thinking I was inherently flawed. And that was always in the background. Like everywhere I went, there's something wrong with me. And I remember I went to a therapist years ago, and she looked at me in the face and she said, "There's nothing wrong with you. And nobody had ever told me that before, and it changed. It was life changing for me. And that's what I want other people to experience. I want them to hear that there's nothing wrong with you. But I also recognize that not everybody has that particular virtue that they're struggling with. They might be struggling with forgiveness. They may have felt like they've been wronged. And there's just, it's a process of letting go, and it's a very slow process, and it's very, very painful for a lot of people. And, the whole painful process, you don't have to go through it alone. That's the other thing. Is what can we do to be there with you as you go through these, whether your lifelong virtue that you're trying to get is acceptance, or whether it's forgiveness, or whether it's boundaries or communication or patience. There's a lot of these that you'll find really you'll be drawn to one or two of them more than the rest.
And you've kind of alluded to this already about being a reflector and the companions. So I'm curious about a couple of things. First, just breaking it down for people that may not be as familiar with VirtueStrong, what does even the word companion mean to you, or what do you hope that these companions provide? And you've said about reflection.
Right. So kind of what I see is that there are people who are highly introverted and highly extroverted people. And I guess they may have different ways of dealing with things. I'm a highly introverted person and always have been, really. And it doesn't mean that I, don't like people. It's just when you're introverted, you tend to become more energized when you're by yourself. You like to spend lots of time by yourself and things like that. When you're extroverted, it's kind of the opposite. You go out and you're always in coffee shops, you're always around a lot of people, and you sort of get energized by the people. And there's no right or wrong. It's just, they're both just ways of being. It's not neither one is good or bad. But as an introvert, it's really hard to reach out to other people. Like it's one of the most difficult things. So like, let's say you're dealing with self-acceptance or something like that. And now you also have to go out and reach out to somebody and sort of reveal all of this stuff. So the other part of it, when you're doing the work to figure out how you can sort of get better peace of mind, is you let go of the secrets. It's the secrets is when things start to grow in you, and telling someone sort of lets that out. It exposes it. It's like, oh, okay, so what? So what? So whatever it is that you think is a secret that you have to hold, who cares? Like, so what? That's such a healing thing to do. And so VirtueStrong, what you can do is you can talk with these guides, and it's totally private. You can say all this stuff and then 2 seconds later delete it all, and like it's gone forever. And so it's a safe space for people who are introverts like me, who they want to work through some of these emotions and some of these issues, and they need something that they can confide in, even if it's just for a few moments and then you delete it. You can totally do that, which is probably exactly what I would have done. If I would have had this product back then, I probably would have talked to the guides and then immediately delete everything, and it's gone. And just that process by itself is actually very therapeutic. What we have is not therapy, but it can be therapeutic. And really what's happening is you're healing yourself. That's what's happening. You're going through steps, it's walking along with you, and you're doing the work yourself. So we always say this is not a substitute for therapy. And if you need professional care, definitely go, seek out professional care, because this is not a substitute for that. But so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
It does. And speaking of confidentiality, which of course, as a therapist, I live in that world. I am curious, and I know it could get technical, but you mentioned about deleting it. And I think people do get concerned, rightly so, about where is this information going? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes. So we have a database that we use to collect the data, to collect the conversations and the messages. We don't store any backups. We don't back up the data. So if something happens where we lose our data, which is, to me, totally scary from the days of when I would develop systems and we would store databases. And, that's, if you lose that, you lose everything. So we go to great lengths to back things up. This we intentionally do not back up at all. So you can delete everything. When you delete everything from our database, it is gone. It is completely gone. There's no backups and we cannot restore it. And we actually say that in our privacy policy. So we do that intentionally. And that's the reason why. Because honestly, if I were using this system, I would probably use it and then delete stuff, especially the stuff that I felt like I needed to get off my chest to just tell someone. And in this case, it's an AI chatbot. But if you think about it really deeply, all of your experience, no matter what it is, happens internally anyway. If you're talking with somebody else, you're still experiencing it internally. So there's always the kind of the belief, we've been trained, our minds have been trained that this person across from us is the source of something, but all of the experiences actually happen inside of you and inside of everybody. And so you can't actually, have experiences outside of your own sort of structure there. And so this companion, these VirtueStrong companions, can provide that reflection that sort of simulates a real human.
This dog barking at Amazon. Hold on. I'll just go into my next. So, and I'm going back, I know that again, technical, but when you say about, one could totally delete it. What if somebody doesn't want to delete it? Who sees that? Because oftentimes, and I think we're all getting so accustomed to putting in so many thoughts into different things that we don't exactly even know where they're going anyway. But yeah, who sees that?
Nobody sees it. No humans see it. We don't have humans on the back end of the system. It's all AI generated and stored electronically. And we just don't review anything. And we do that intentionally.
Going back to what you said, and I think you started going there about who can be helped by this. Like if you were sitting next to somebody at 2 a.m. during a really difficult moment for them, what do you hope that VirtueStrong gives them? And then at the same time, even if they're not going through a difficult moment, but they're just looking for working on tapping into their strengths, what do you hope it gives to somebody like that?
So, Michelle, I've known you a long time, and you know that I get philosophical and deep really quickly. And so I want you to stop me if I go too far, but I do think this is relevant, okay? So when you have your highest priority is inner peace, then things change for you. You're willing to actually work on it. And we call this by a bunch of names. Self-care is one. If you're reading books, if you're journaling, if you're seeing a therapist, if you're doing affirmations, all of these things, if you're meditating, contemplating, all these types of things are little steps that lead you to peace. And they all work together. And when you're in that zone where you're actively working on yourself, I guess what I'm trying to say is this. There's a tendency to see something out there and want to fix it right away. But what you're seeing is a consequence. So what's actually happening is things are sort of arising from us. We can't really see it. It's just the nature of human beings. It's just the nature of who we are. But things are arising from us. And so if you really want to change your situation, no matter what it is, whether it's loneliness or forgiveness or not thinking you're smart enough or all of that, it's actually an inside job. It's always an inside job. And what happens is that you have to trust those words. And until you trust those words, it's unlikely that you will, because they don't really, until you've actually gone through this path, and you can see others who have done it, so that they provide good evidence. They are the evidence, actually. But when you start to do that and you start to retrain your mind, retrain your thinking, relax, and start to do some of this self-discovery, that's when you don't see changes right away. That's the other thing that's very, very frustrating, is that you have to stick with it for a long period of time, and you just kind of have to dedicate time and energy to it, which if it's your top priority, you will too. But that's really what this is it's one tool. There's many, many tools out there, and I would recommend using all of them that you can get your hands on. But if you make that shift, you make the shift between, I'm going to stop trying to fix what's out there, and I'm going to start working in here. And when you make that shift, this is just one tool that can help you. And that's really what it's designed to do. So here's the really cool part, Michelle. AI has given us something that we've never had before. So back when I was doing this, I would read books, lots, like libraries of books. Like I have bookshelves all, from the floor to the ceiling filled with self-help books. And then I have my situation. I have what my mind is telling me. Like my mind is telling me how awful I am and flawed and ugly and just, horrible things. And I had to take what was in those books, and I had to take my situation, and I had to figure out the connection between the two. We don't have to do that anymore. So what it does is the AI guides are just like those bookshelves of all those self-help books. But the difference is I can share my experience, and they're going to go right to the page, right to the sentence that I need at that very instant. And that to me is miraculous. So I see this project, when you look at how this thing is put together and you look at what it does and how all of these pieces, it's able to pull all this stuff together, and it's able to work for everybody, for all these different experiences, using the same philosophical foundational truths that we know are true because we've experienced them. That's what we've kind of packaged up. And it's amazing. And we don't really take a lot of credit because honestly, it's the AI engines that are able to do most of the work that we've never been able to do before.
First of all, it is exciting to think about the time-saving aspect of that and how pinpointed AI can be as a tool to extract the exact sentence, the exact information that we need, and apply it to what we're going through. So it's incredibly exciting. And I'm curious too about why, and again, you mentioned, and you're so open about people can use multiple tools. There's many different things out there. Is there anything that you would want to amplify that VirtueStrong provides that other tools, including ChatGPT, for instance, may not offer as readily?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that's a question we get all the time. Is like, how is this any different than ChatGPT? It is way different than ChatGPT. Here's why. ChatGPT, what I think of it as, is like raw intelligence. You ask it something, it's going to take the words. It doesn't actually know anything. What it does is it's a pattern finder. That's what it is. And so it's going to take what you give it, and it's going to pattern find things, right? And then give it back to you. And that's great. And it does a great job at that. In fact, that's the tool to use when you're doing any kind of scientific research, if you're doing anything based on, you're doing like contract work or policies, things like that. It is so good at that. It's scary. But with raw intelligence that ChatGPT has, what it needs context. It doesn't know things. It doesn't know what it doesn't know. So it doesn't know what situation you're in. It only knows what you tell it. And so what happens in this area, and going back to kind of like the anxiety and the kind of the pain that we're feeling internally, a lot of that is based on distortions. And you learn that in it's just the way the mind works. It's not that there's anything wrong with anybody, but the mind is a storytelling machine. That's what it is. The mind tells stories. And those stories aren't necessarily true. They're just based on, your past, the trauma that you've had and the relationships that you've had and failures, all these things, and your mind is informing all this, and it basically creates these distortions. And as a therapist, the cognitive distortions is one of like the first things that you learn in this area. And so so when you give ChatGPT information that includes distortions, it doesn't know those are distortions. And so what we do is we create a lens. It's almost like you can view it as like a camera lens. The camera lens creates context for the ChatGPT raw intelligence to come back through that lens to give you exactly what you need. And what we've done is we've created that lens. And that lens is in the context of, hey, this person is interested in the virtues. Here's what the virtue is. Here's how you pursue it. That we've created that lens. The other thing that's kind of fascinating about what we've done is that lens that we've created is not a static lens. It's not one single thing that we just applied to the large language model. It is a moving pipeline. And so what it does is as you're talking, it's changing that lens depending on what you're saying, but it's looking out for your well-being. It's also guiding you more towards the thrust of the product, which is pursuing your virtues rather than focusing on your problems. You talk about your problems, that's great. That's just, problems are like opportunities is what they really are. Opportunities for growth, and that's how we see them. That's the kind of context that we're lending to the intelligence.
It's incredible, and it sounds like you have taken a lot of care in this development. And I know that there's concerned, and rightly so, it's new technology for everyone. Concerned psychiatrists, concerned therapists, who say AI chatbots can create unhealthy dependencies or even psychological harms when people use them for emotional support. You mentioned how you throughout, and not you, but what you have programmed this to do is to really reinforce the importance of human interaction. Can you speak a little bit more to that? How does your design address those concerns? And also maybe a part two is, I know we have discussed, and you have discussed a lot of openness to want to collaborate with researchers and to further make AI safer. So curious about your response.
Yes. So I can't answer that question without talking about you, Michelle, because you have had, 25 years of clinical experience, and you are the one who ensured that all of that care was built into the system. And that just makes it all the more extraordinary. So let's talk about that care, and you can chime in because you know this as well as I do. So there are certain vulnerabilities that we have when we're talking about these things. Sometimes we might get triggered in certain ways, and there's different types of triggers. So we've put all of those in where it is this lens that we've created that's moving along with the conversation is listening for cues. And when it finds cues that sort of indicate that one of those triggers might be happening, it changes its focus and it goes more towards grounding, exactly what a therapist would do. And I can't stress this enough. What we have is not therapy. It's not a substitute for therapy. So be sure that if you need a professional, go seek a professional. This is just something in addition to a complement to therapy, is kind of how we see it. But so those things, those triggers, we've put those in there. There's like 6 different types of them. But then there's also things that are longer term. So like the one danger that we have is, how do we prevent somebody from using this too much? Like, what if somebody starts relying on it and they start talking to these guides all the time, way too much? We've put in protections for that too. So the system really is designed around a session. And so it wants to talk to you a little, It wants to give you some feedback, and then it wants you to go out and do something out in the real world. Go interact with people, go to your job, go try to get that promotion, and go talk to your partner, about your conflicts. It wants you to do all these things, and then it wants you to come back and say, tell me how it went. So it doesn't, we don't want you to live your life in front of the computer. It's actually the opposite. It actually directs you to go out into the real world, learn from your real life experiences. And then this is just a form of reflection. So those are some of the safety things we've built in, and we've made it as absolute complete as possible.
What specific, maybe this is a nice opportunity to share this, but what specific research collaborations would you be open to, or would you like to see happen, whether it's with academic or clinical institutions, to validate outcomes and improve safety even more?
Yes, that's a good question. So we're looking for a partnership right now. We're looking for a partner who cares about mental health. They want to see, we're in the middle of a mental health crisis. People are suffering, and we want to help them in any way that we can. And we want to leverage the power of AI as much as we can in the most responsible way that we can to help people through these rough spots, these rough times. And so what we want to do is we want a research study that can show and almost prove our model. It proves the safety of our model. It proves the efficacy of the program, all these things. And we're kind of open to, various types of arrangements for that.
Nice, nice. Is there anything that I have not asked you that you want to be able to address and want to be able to express or say about yourself or your motivation or VirtueStrong or anything?
Well, I want to say this, and maybe we've already covered it, but I think it's worth saying again. And Michelle, you know this as much as I do. Everybody goes through hard times. You cannot go through this life where it's easy all the time. You just can't. And if you stumble upon something that helps you, and you remember how bad the panic attacks were and how low you felt, life will drop you to your knees, like that kind of low. If you're able to climb out of that, all you want to do is tell somebody else. That's all you're like, just show them, hey, look, I get it. I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know your situation exactly, but I know that it's painful, and I know that I had pain before, and that there's a way you can get out of it. And we've just put it out there. Here it is. Here's a possible solution. And if it's not a good fit for you, don't waste time with it. Go with what works for you. So if going to support groups is the best thing for you, do that. If religion is the thing for you, do that. Like, it's very individualized for the person. And so this is just one other thing that can help. And if this happens to jive with you, to kind of fit with your situation, then great. If not, then great. But we want you guys, we want everybody to get through some of the hard, painful stuff.
I appreciate it. I'm really glad we did start with that unexpected question about what you were like when you were a kid, because I think it also emphasizes kind of it's a brand. I think it's your brand of wanting not just engagement and peace and the things that you've been working on for yourself, but you want that for other people in harmony, like you said. And what really strikes me, which I think is so helpful, is knowing that you're not selling anything. Like you are literally just wanting people to match themselves with the tools that help them the most. And if this is one of those tools, then fantastic. And it, to me, that gets me very excited about people checking it out and being open to seeing what impact it could make. So I just want to thank you for your time, and I'm excited for people to check it out and to hear directly from them too, from users about the impact. And thank you for being you and for creating and being open also. You mentioned me, so thank you for that. But as far as feedback, always about how to make the most safe, um, to optimize safety, but also the responsibility of all of us as consumers too. You know, it doesn't stop with these apps. I think it really is important for us to be as educated as possible and to be mindful of our own vulnerabilities. So I think you brought that to light as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thanks, Michelle. You're fantastic, and your clinical experience is so important here. And I think I want to say on behalf of you and I, we're looking for people who want to kind of join this, who want to solve some of this. Where, I mean, people are just suffering, and what can we do, like, together? You know, this is we want to make this a collaboration where we can make it synergistic and take what some of these, you know, if you're kind of the healing type, how do we incorporate what you can do with what we can do and make something even better? So we're always looking to expand and have more reach and reach more people and just sort of elevate the overall vibration of really the planet. Really, that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, it's, I guess, it's an honor to get to work on this. But I appreciate your interviewing, and it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Jay. Same here.
All right, we're done.
Yeah.